zones should be as low as you possibly can get them without experiencing stick drift. And what stick drift is basically when your character in the game moves without you touching your stick. So you want it to be, your dead zone ideally is the second you touch your stick to the left or you touch your stick to the right, whatever it may be, your character moves with that movement. If you feel like you're moving to the left and it takes too much time, or you're moving to the left without even touching your stick, you have your dead zone too high or too low. So what you want to do, and what I recommend, is moving your dead zone as far down as, maybe 5%, but let's hop into the game here and I'll show you the difference. So once we're actually in a game or we're in creative or whatever, this is where you can start to feel that dead zone. And what I recommend is just moving around like you normally would. When you start off, like right now, my sensitivity is super, super low, so of course it's not going to feel exactly right how you want it, but this is the best way to start getting a feel on if your dead zone's right, or maybe, like right now, I'm not touching my controller and my guy was just moving. So that tells me right away that I need to raise my move stick dead zone. I'm going to move it up to around 10%, because right there, like my guy was moving without me touching my controller. That's a pretty good sign, and I'm going to move my look stick up to like 6%. You want your look stick typically to be less than your move stick, because there's going to be many times where you're trying to be very, very precise and not move too much around, but you're going to want, especially if you're on linear or even on exponential and legacy, you want to be able to move and flick your shots and move your edits very quickly, which is why you want that look stick to be lower. It honestly feels better, and 10% and 6% are the ones that I actually do use on my main account. Yeah, we're good there on dead zone. I recommend just keep tweaking it like that. If you get that, what I just had, where you're moving and you didn't even touch your controller, you definitely need to raise your dead zones, and I wouldn't go too much higher than like 15% though on either stick. So now this brings us to your build mode and your edit mode sensitivity. And by the way, the dead zone tips, those work for console and PC. I've been playing on both. The dead zones remain relatively the same. It just depends on your controller. So you guys might have different dead zones than me. It doesn't mean your settings are any better or any worse. But getting into build zone and edit mode sensitivity.
Princess!
What I recommend for this is something that I feel like a lot of people have been messing up. And I recommend starting with your edit mode sensitivity. But here's the trick. What you're going to want to do is, and what I think a lot of people mess up, is when you start getting wrong settings. Let's say you move your horizontal look to 42% and you move your vertical to like 41, and you're like, okay, well this is lower than my typical setting, so I have to crank my edit sensitivity way up there, and you see how like fast this goes. But the problem here is this is the reason a lot of you guys miss shots after edits, because you just tweak your edit sensitivity and you just keep pushing it up and up and up. And so think about this real quick. You're used to moving at 42% speed, I think is what I put it at. And then when you're editing, you're moving like that. You know how hard it is to hit a shot after going from this quick? Like, just look at this. Look how quick this is compared to this. So what I recommend with finding your edit sensitivity, we're going to put this down to 1.0. And instead of toggling the edit mode sensitivity right away to try to find the perfect one, we're going to move our horizontal and our vertical speeds up to 100%. And we're going to move the boost down to 0 for now. We'll talk about boost a little bit more here in a second. But we're going to have horizontal and vertical speeds at 100%. So now, obviously, this is going to feel way too fast here. Once you have your look on 100%, you're going to be able to keep hitting these edits. And if you feel like this is too quick for edits, which actually this does feel like pretty fast for me even, then let's say, so this is a multiplier, guys. I hate to get into math again, but we're going to be doing it again in this video. So let's say that 50% feels great for your vertical and your horizontal. Then you know that your edit sensitivity can only be 2 times. 2 times, because you know that 100% is that look in the vertical speed that felt best for you. In my opinion, that still felt a little quick, so I would go down to around 1.8. But the deal here, and ideally what you guys are going to do, is you're going to keep moving your horizontal and your vertical speed. So 100% felt way too quick for me. So let me go to 90% here. So what we're going to do is we're going to put it on 90%, and I'm going to try my edits out. And
Princess!
Good. Which 90% already feels like I'm a lot more controlled than I was on 100%. So now let's just try out we'll go down to just to kind of make a point of this. Let's go down to 60%. Let's see if 60% feels good. So we go to 60%, and it feels okay, but it definitely feels too slow. Like, I can't hit all my edits at the speed I want to, and I have to be kind of a lot more precise with this. So then we would jump up to 70%, we jump up to 80%, and that's how you find your edit mode sensitivity. So you gotta find your edit mode sensitivity before you find your look horizontal and your vertical speeds. That is one of the keys that I feel like most people mess up, and it's something you've probably messed up yourself, because I have personally not done this right in the past many a time. So what personally feels best to me is around 85%. That is what feels the best when it comes to sensitivity. So for this next part, we're going to move our horizontal speed down to 50%. This is just a good testing ground, in my opinion. 50% is like the perfect area to test if your sends needs to be lower or higher than that. But what we're going to do is, now that I've established that 85% feels the best for me with the edit sensitivity, what you gotta do now is find your multiplier based on 50%. So 50 times 1.7, we're doing some multiplication here, is equal to 85. You got it on the calculator right here. So what that means is that 1.7 is my edit sensitivity at 50%, but let's say that we changed our horizontal or vertical, that's going to slightly change our edit sensitivity. So you guys are starting to see how this is all coming together, and that way you can control your edit sensitivity while also controlling your look and your vertical speeds. And so just for example's sake, we're going to move, the build sensitivity is usually going to be pretty similar to your edit, but I like to have mine slightly above my edit sensitivity. So we'll put that at 1.8. So now we seem like we have a good handle of our edit sensitivity. The build sensitivity feels pretty good too, and we're absolutely cranking already. We're about to be goated on the sticks. So you guys are seeing how this is starting to come together. So for the next stage in finding your sensitivity, we're going to be hopping into Tito's course right here to try out some aim training. And what we're going to be doing is going to the 360 hip fire part. So right here, this is where we're going to be able to find out what our look horizontal and vertical should be, because in my opinion these are two of the most important values in the game. So what we're trying to do in this stage is figure out what sensitivity works best for flick shots. So right here we're just in this 360 and we're trying out our flick shots. So you see I'm just flicking to the target, and it's actually kind of ironic, but like 50% is usually around where my flick shots are pretty accurate. What you are aiming to do here is be able to move to the target pretty quickly, but also hit them accurately. Ideally, that's the goal. Of course, you're not going to be perfect, especially not at first. And I do want to say this is harder on console. But 50% is pretty much always really good for me when it comes to look horizontal. So that's what you want to decide here, is what is good. 50%, that is really good for me. The next step here. And guys, I know this is a very roundabout way, but what we're trying to do is get you guys a sensitivity that lasts you a long time. And this is a process that, instead of like most YouTube videos on aim, where people are like, you know, here's my settings, just copy them. I've done that in the past and stuff. Clearly it doesn't work for you guys, so this guide is actually going to help you guys. So now, we're going to want to be in the 360 portion here, where the targets are moving. And this is where you want to test. This is where you want to test your aim assist with your hip fire tracking. You don't get a lot of aim assist on linear when you're in here. Let me just show you guys exponential real quick. Exponential is going to be to where you can actually have a little bit higher of an X and Y, because I can actually track this a lot better on exponential. Like, you guys already see the difference there. But watch what happens on linear whenever we lower our sensitivity in here. So you guys saw exponential. Now let's lower to linear, and let's go to around 44, and I like to have my vertical slightly lower. But whenever we lower that, we're able to track a little bit better, especially a lot better than I was at 50%. 50% just felt like way too fast, and it's not the same as exponential. That's one of the advantages exponential has over linear, is the hip fire from like this range. But at this point in games, you're going to be able to ADS kind of like I did in the last video, and you can track really well on linear. So I would recommend at this range on linear to be ADSing, but it's the perfect way to test if your hip fire is too fast or too slow. So 44 and 43% are usually really good for me, but I recommend you guys keep tweaking your settings in this stage right here until you find the perfect sensitivity for where you're actually feeling like you can accurately target these guys with your hip fire. But here's the trick. Now that we've done that, we know that 44 and 43% are really good at that range. But what's the difference here? We found out that 50% was really, really good for my flick shots. So what we're going to do here is we're going to move the horizontal and the vertical boost up to 6%. That way, okay, really, really tough math again in this video. We got 44 plus 650. And I like to keep the vertical boost and the horizontal boost the same, so it doesn't really surprise me too much. So that's why I keep this one at 6% as well. So it's going to be 50 and 49, which is absolutely fine. But you guys see how this is all coming together now, to where when I'm barely moving my stick, I can accurately track this guy. But if I want a flick shot, I can push over and I can flick shot. So, like you guys see, it's really hard to flick from this range, and it's doing 1 in 6 damage, so it's not the best example in the world. But that is where I was absolutely wrong, and I think a lot of people were wrong with linear, that it's better to go, even just like on the ADS, where it's better to go low on your look speeds, it's better to go low on your look speeds here with that little bit of boost, so that way you can still flick in box fights and stuff like that as well. So I kind of consider Legacy and Exponential to be really, really similar since they have similar look curves. But what you're going to be looking for here is you can actually have a higher X and Y on Legacy than you can on Linear. So I like to go up to like 70, 65%. And also Unknown Army has been absolutely shredding every single person in the competitive scene. And this is around what he plays. Your targeting sensitivity should be anywhere from 30 to 40 in my opinion. And then scope sensitivity, that's whatever feels good for you with snipers. Your building and edit mode sensitivity should also be relatively high. This is where you can get up to like 2 point something if you really, really want to. But with Legacy and all that, it's all about your aim and using your ADS, which is why I don't really like to use Legacy too much, because it just feels so much worse to me than Linear whenever it comes to your builds and your edits. So it's kind of a trade-off, but obviously Legacy works for a lot of people. Now going back to Exponential, the only difference I would make with Exponential is I would just turn up my look speed, my horizontal, both vertical and horizontal speeds for ADS, and my look horizontal and vertical regular. Because with that lower curve on Exponential, you can afford to have a little bit higher of a sensitivity, where then you start off slow and you can still accurately hit the hip fire and all of that. To wrap everything up, here's my settings just to go over everything, all of them together. I did bump up my edit mode and my build mode sends after changing these down to 44 and 43. But guys, hope you enjoyed the video. I'm not concluding this. It's been too long already. See you guys in the next video. Left trigger warning, mouse and keyboard players who have ever died to controller aim assist may want to tune away from this video. I don't want to name any names, but there are certainly some pros out there who would not like the results of this study. A couple of those names rhyme with Sneefu and Blizzle, but again, I'm not naming any names. Ladies and gentlemen, I figured out aim assist. I want to keep the intro really short. I put a ton of time into this, so if you don't mind throwing a like on it, that would be really appreciated. But either way, it's your bro Rody bringing you a brand new video. Let's get right into it. I completely reset my settings for this video, so if you're just looking for a straight up screenshot of my new settings, you're not going to find that right away. But what I'm going to be doing is leaving timestamps throughout the video, so if you need to come back and check out specific aspects of your aim or your look sensitivity, you're going to be able to find that in the description of this video with all the timestamps there. I want to start off by getting into the components of aiming, which I think is something a lot of people overlook whenever they're trying to decide whether they should use Linear, Exponential, Legacy, or just whatever sensitivity they should be using in the game. So first of all, I think almost most importantly for controller players, we have AR tracking, which that is basically just your tracking of long distance, medium distance, or close range of opponents who are running or swerving, whatever it may be. It's your tracking of those people, which is completely controlled by ADS sense.
You stop.
Then we have sniper sensitivity as well, which is also controlled right now on the new look sensitivity completely by your ADS. If you're on Legacy, you can still customize your own sniper sensitivity. You guys are really lucky, but for right now on controller, we can't do that with the new sensitivity. Then third tier with ADS, we have long distance tracking. And now what I mean by long distance tracking, I mean once an opponent is so far away that you no longer get aim assist anymore on those shots, which I'm sure a lot of you have experienced. It's usually around 150 meters. Then up fourth, we have flick shots, which is completely controlled by your look curve and your look sensitivity. Those are the two things that flick shots really get dependent on, and that's usually linear, which is the best one for that. Then we also have your hip fire tracking with SMGs and shotguns also. A little bit different from flick shots, but it is just as equally as important. And then finally, we have switching between your long and your short, which is kind of encompassing everything together, which is so important to be able to shotgun, then switch to shooting your AR, shooting a sniper, and all those things together are what makes somebody really a smooth and great player. So now that we know all the components, let's dive into the first one with your ADS. So going into ADS, we're going to skip through all of this. Remember that I reset my settings, so these aren't the settings that we're going to end up with at the end of this video. But coming down here to aim down sight sensitivity in the advanced. So we're looking at the settings that Epic kind of recommended to us based on what it used to be for Legacy. And you'll notice these little green bars of what a lot of people have kind of based their sensitivities off of. And this is the biggest mistake of the entire video, in my opinion, that the whole controller community has been making, and I myself was making too, until, we went through full science mode, nerd mode with this video right here. So 16% is right around where I've seen most players who switch to linear use, because 16% is the same thing that people on Exponential or Legacy use. It's right around there, give or take up to 20 or maybe down to like 12. However, this makes it nearly impossible to hit those long distance shots past 150 meters. I'm going to display all of this once I talk through the changes. And what people have been overlooking is that you can actually drop your ADS down to around 6%. Down to anywhere from 5 to 8% I have found is perfect for still being able to hit some of these long distance shots while also tracking at the medium range. And here's the trick. A lot of players have been moving their vertical and horizontal boosts down to 0%. I did this as well, thinking this was the best possible thing. And, you're on linear. You want to get that rapid speed movement. However, you only want that no boost on your look sensitivity. You don't want that on your ADS as well, which is why moving this boost up to 10%, right around 10%, give or take, these values can definitely be tweaked to be more fitting for you guys. But what I have found for myself is that moving these to 10% and having your horizontal and vertical speeds at 6%, what this is going to do is whenever you're trying to be super precise from long range, you can barely move the stick. Barely move the stick, and what you're going to get is the perfect amount of just being able to go slow and track people from long range. Whereas if you need to, up close or whatever, to jump from target to target, you can push the stick all the way to the left or the right, and you're going to get that additional 10% to catch up to running targets and anything like that, which is something that's been massively overlooked with ADS. Now, I like to turn the turning boost ramp time. I pushed that down to right around 0.10 seconds. I started off having it on 0, but I've slowly worked it up, and it feels pretty good at 0.1 seconds. But again, this is all off of feel, but I think you should use a ramp time as well, because it keeps it just from snapping too quickly and you losing control of your ADS. So let's hop on in and let me show you guys what this really does. Okay, so notice how well this is tracking the target. And I can hover right around the upper body and just follow it all the way. And I can even shoot the burst to where the burst is basically following the bot. I know this is up close. Let's take a step back and show you guys this from medium range as well, and then we'll show you far range too, because obviously you know, the goal is to find a sensitivity that allows us to do all 3 types of tracking. So I think the general worry with going this low with sensitivity was that it wouldn't be fast enough to track a running player. But what I have found is that going this low with the boost on as well, you're plenty fast enough to keep up with a player, and especially when that aim assist kicks in, like right here. The aim assist kicks in, and it's almost, as long as I'm moving the stick with it, it's almost carrying me on the target, to where every single shot is almost registering. And this is with a burst gun as well, where typically it's hard to hit all 3 shots. You can see even from this range, I'm hitting at least 2 shots every single time, but I'm hitting 3 on some occasions as well, like right there. Absolutely disgusting. So let's jump back to the farthest distance and see how that is as well. So here we are at 100 meters. This is where we should still see aim assist. And yeah, I do feel aim assist on the target actually. And I have a pretty easy time of still tracking the target. Obviously, I'm not going to be perfect. This is only day number 3 of me on these settings. It's not going to be perfect by any means. But I have already seen a dramatic improvement from what I used to have on aim assist. You can see right there. Here is where the biggest difference is made. So notice how the target is right around 136 meters. We'll go to 140. We'll see. Yeah, so we're out of aim assist range right here. I can get rid of the arrow. Right here, I'm no longer getting aim assist